Untap, upkeep, and welcome back to the channel if you've been here before. If you haven't been here before, then please sit back, relax, and enjoy the show that we have for you. So, one of my last videos, I showed a budget Crush the Blood braided deck where everything was less than $1 at the time of the build, and it got a lot of people thinking and feeling nostalgic, and I'm very happy to hear that. So, it is very important for me that you like, share, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications because then you could be part of this, just like the subscriber Tasty Snackies. Tasty Snackies, you are a wicked wizard, and this is a deck build for you. Tasty Snackies actually commented on our Crest the Blood Braided deck, challenging me to build an Arcanis budget, everything less than $1 build. And this is what we came up with. Now, what makes this such a challenge is typically the way that Arcanus has to be built. And why is that? So Arcanus, the Omnipotent, is a 3 triple blue, 3/4 legendary wizard with tap and draw 3 cards, tap 2 blue, and bounce them back to your hand. Now, typically the way that we do this is we have what we call Laboratory Maniac wins. There are Laboratory Maniac, there's a Jace that does the same thing, and there's Thassa's Oracle. However, all of those are outside of our budget, so we had to go a different route. Now let's dive in and see which route we took. So using this strategy, I decided to add in JC Arcane Strategist. He's a 6-drop blue planeswalker with 4 loyalty when he comes into the battlefield. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. That's important, and we'll get to it in a minute. So you get to +1 and draw a card, and then you can -7. Creatures you control can't be blocked this turn. The +1/+1 counter thing can actually matter in a couple of different instances, and we'll go through that when we get to the creature section. The -7 is kind of iffy, I think, just because our main win conditions don't really involve not being blocked, except for maybe one of them. I mean, there's a chance we could just amass a giant board and just turn things sideways too. So it's kind of 50-50. Predominantly, we care about being able to put 1/1 counters on things and draw cards. So let's dive into it a little bit deeper. So Silvermere, Burnished Heart, Solemn Simulacrum, the Sad Robot himself, they all keep our mana up. They keep us flowing mana because they all like the Sad Robot and Burnished Heart allows us to go get lands, and then the Mirror is just a nice little mana dork. Think of it like a Birds of Paradise, if you will. So Amicle's Messenger, Detective of the Month, Alronda Skydreamer, Ethereal Investigator, Homunculus Horde, the Mischievous Mystic, and the Nadar Kraken. They all do something whenever we draw cards. They put out bodies. Nadir Kraken, we can pay 1 mana. Whenever we draw a card, it gets a counter, and we make a blue tentacle creature token. The others have to trigger whenever we draw our second card in a turn. And I know what you're probably sitting there thinking, but Buddha Dragon, why? We can't do it more than once a turn. Actually, we can with Kelpie Guide, Vizier Tumbling Sands, and Loreth of the Healing House. We're able to actually untap him on other players' turns and keep him drawing us cards, making us bodies, and continuing to pose a threat. There are a couple of more effects like this in the budget that we could add and swap out a couple of things if we feel like they are not enough effects. But I don't think we really have to worry that much about them. I think 3 is an adequate number. I guess that's kind of the beauty of doing this because it's almost like a precon, if you will, and it gives you the ability to build this deck for yourself and kind of modify it and tweak it a little bit in a way that makes more sense to you, in a way that can be more efficient, that kind of thing. We also have the Chasm Skulker in here, so whenever we draw a card, he gets a 1/1 counter. So that means every time we draw a card for our turn, he gets 1 counter. Every time we activate our commander, he will get 3 counters. And if Jake's is out, he can get a bonus counter. So this thing can get really, really big, really, really fast. It usually eats a kill spell, understandably, very quickly. People don't want to have to deal with this thing. But whenever the Chasm Skulker actually dies, we're going to make X11 Blue Squid creature tokens with Island Walk, where X is the number of all encounters on the Chasm Skulker. Now, if you have never, ever, ever dealt with anything that has land walk is the ability. It's called land walking. There's a couple of different ones. There's one for each of the colors, island, swamp, forest, all that. And there's legendary, there's non-legendary, there's non-basic. There's a couple. There's a wide variety. What this essentially means is it's in a four-person pod. If one of those other players actually has an island, your squids can go and hit them in the face every turn, all day, every day, as long as they control that island and they cannot block it. So take that as you will. You could continuously pound them in the face with your squids, keep them up as blockers. I mean, the game's gonna end, so you know, do what you feel you need to do. We have the hydroelectric specimen that allows us to play it at flash speed, which, if you've never dealt with flash, is like playing an instant. Yes, he's a creature and he follows the timing restrictions to an extent. Flash means he can be put down as a way to stop something from happening due to his ability. So his ability is whenever he enters, you could change the target instant or sorcery spell with a single target to this thing. So if somebody was to try to Doomblade our Chasm Skulker before we're ready for it to die, or one of the other win conditions, we can flash this out, and instead of killing Chasm Skulker or one of the other win conditions that we need, instead they're going to hit a hydroelectric specimen. Kind of funny, actually. Not people see this coming. One of our main win conditions is the Psychosis Crawler. He is a 5-drop Phyrexian horror creature whose power toughness are each equal to the number of cards in our hand. And the most important part and why he's our win condition, whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses 1 life. Fabulous! So with this is where the Jace +1/+1 counter actually comes in handy and actually matters. If somebody plays what we call a wheel effect, or an effect that says everybody discards cards and draws new hands, or at least X cards, then the Psychosis Crawler, if I'm not mistaken, by his actual ruling, will continuously check for your hand size. And there is a point where you have 0 cards in hand, and at that point, he goes, "Hey, boss, you got no cards in hand," and will yeet himself right to the graveyard. Too bad. So sad. So, with the Jace, however unlucky we might be to get it, if we do happen to get it, it works out great because then that just means um, he's going to get a +1/+1 counter on him, and he's going to be a little bit bigger, a little bit better, and he won't die to an effect like that. So that's good. But it's just a nice slipped on. People sleep on this card a lot, and I think it's a good win condition for this card since we're not running the typical win conditions. We're on a budget. The next win condition, and probably the funnest one to try and get off, is Trishka's Decaphile. So it's a 2-drop 1/3 human wizard. Gives us no max hand size. Sweet. Pay 3 in a blue, get to draw another card. We're all about that. We're a blue deck. And this is how we could win the game, though. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you have exactly 13 cards in your hand, you win the game. That's simple. Now, I will make the cliff note, if you will, that you have to have 13 cards before your upkeep. You cannot have your upkeep and then go, okay, with that ability on the stack, I'm going to do this draw, up to 13 cards. You have to have 13 at the beginning of your upkeep. So do keep that in mind. Our last backup win condition, and I guess you could call him the backup singer, the secondary commander, is Atempsis All Seeing. There's a 3 triple blue 4/5 legendary Sphinx with flying. He has 2 tap a blue tap him, draw 2 cards, and then discard a card. Goes great with Triska Decaphile if we're a couple cards short, or maybe we just trying to dig for something. Now, what makes him a backup win condition is the fact that Attempts All Seeing deals damage to an opponent. You may reveal your hand if cards with at least 6 different converted mana costs are revealed this way. That player loses the game. So, in retrospect, you hit somebody with this, reveal your hand, and you could kill somebody on the spot. It's pretty hot, pretty spicy. You get to basically Exodia somebody in the face in Magic. What's not to love about this? I fail to see where we don't enjoy every second of this. And my apologies, my wonderful daughter decided to have a whole bunch of fun. Kids are great. I love my kid, especially since she's learning how to be a Magic the Gathering player. Maybe we'll see her on the channel one day when we get up to possibly doing some actual face reveals, so to say. So one of the creatures I didn't hit on was the Root Wizard. So whenever you draw your second card each turn, he gets a 1/1 counter. Not that great. He's just a nice 3-drop body that we can just kind of keep some kind of board presence, don't hit me kind of thing. He probably could be dropped for, one of the other effects that allows us to untap permanents. So that's something to consider if you're trying to build this deck. And same thing with this Strix Lookout. It's just a nice 2-drop, 1/2 flying vigilant creature. It can be dropped as well for any kind of a like untapped permanent kind of creature that you're wanting to have in this deck, and still be within budget. It's just a nice body to have out there, quick, easy, and hopefully keep us alive. Almost done with our creatures. We have Scourge of the Fleets, who, when he enters the battlefield, return each creature your opponents control with toughness X or less to their owner's hands, where X is the number of islands you control. Newsflash, we are a mono blue deck. So, in theory, if all you did was play a land every single turn, then by turn 7, you should have, in theory, at least 7 islands. Even if you have 3 or 4, you're still bouncing a whole big board if you had to. So it's not a good creature per se, but for budget restrictions, I think it's a nice include. It's a nice hop over, especially because it comes out typically after our commander. It's a nice way to just kind of reset the board. Blue doesn't really have ways to blow things up, but we can make people very, very annoyed and bounce it all back to their hand. And Talra the Sky Summoner, if you don't know, is just a nice 4-drop creature. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you make a 2/2 body. Just a nice include in a budget deck always, especially if you have anything blue and you're trying to play some spells here and there. It's just a nice card to have and keep a board presence, I think. Lastly, of course, I had to put a big dumb dragon in here. I am the Buddha dragon after all, the Dragon King. So, this is Limrith, the Desert Doom. He is a 5-drop, 5/5 flying legendary creature dragon. And he has Ward 4 as long as he's untapped. Oh, look, we have a couple ways to untap him and protect him. So, what makes that good if you've never dealt with Ward before is if somebody tries to Doomblade him, they have to pay not only the mana cost for Doomblade, which is 1 black and 1, they have to pay 4 more mana to target our dragon. Or that spell says, can't do it, and it goes to the grave, and our dragon gets to stay. The dragon also allows us to draw a card whenever he deals combat damage. If for some reason we have fewer than 3 cards in our hand, we draw equal to that difference. So that's always a nice thing to have. I'm looking at you, pesky mono black discard decks, Turgrid, Tony Bones, as the Asian Avenger calls you, and a couple of others. Your filthy, nasty discard decks. Moving forward, as my inner golem calms down about those horrible discard decks, we have a couple of ways to help make sure we don't draw out of the deck and lose the game because we don't run any other way to win the game. So we want to be able to just keep our deck going basically for infinity. Reminiscence and Clear the Mind. They both allow us to shuffle a player's graveyard into their library. That is important. You you get to target the player, sure, and they get a chance to respond. But if for whatever reason you're fighting like a graveyard synergy kind of deck, like if you were fighting something from Joey Schultz over there on the EDH Rec channel, who loves his graveyards, you could wreck his whole day by casting this one spell and shuffle his entire graveyard back into his deck and watch the life leave from his eyes as all his graveyard shenanigans went bye bye. So it's a nice little card to keep in your back pocket. I mean, they're both only a sorcery, so you can't really do it at instant speed. But if you see things starting to get a little scary, probably not a bad idea to do that. Serum Visions and Pawn and Preordained, they both allows to scry and draw cards. Just one does it first, one does a scry first, and one does a draw first. Finalia Revelation is just a nice big draw spell, but it does have a very good bonus if you get to this bonus. So, draw X cards. If X is 10 or more, instead, shuffle your graveyard into your library, draw X cards, untap 5 lands, and you have now max hand size for the rest of the game. Amazing. Oh my. So, if you pay a total of 12 mana, two, you have to pay blue, blue, and 10 into the X. You get all of that. And that would be absolutely backbreaking for an opponent. They have no idea what to expect it could be in your hand. And it would just be a nightmare for them. Raven form allows us to exile an artifact or creature. Very handy because if you haven't dealt with it yet, I know I sure have. My wife has a mono green deck that I've built her, and she has dropped a wonderful Blightsteel Colossus on turn 5. That was horrifying. In case you don't know, the Blightsteel Colossus is a 12/12 indestructible, infecting, trampling monster. So you can't blow it up. And if for some reason it manages to hit the graveyard for whatever reason, it just gets shuffled right back into the deck. So you'll see it again, more than likely. It's not fun. It's just doo doo. So with all that said, Raven form allows us to go, remove it from the game. We're not dealing with that again. Curse of Swine kind of does the same thing, but you can target X creatures where X is going to be however much mana you put into the X. So if you did like Finale of Revelation, you pay a total of 12 mana. You can remove 10 creatures from the game. So it has its points where it's really, really good. Just be careful on who you're giving the boars to, because for each creature exiled this way, its controller makes a 2/2 green boar creature token. So you probably don't want to give it to the person that can actually do some damage, like especially a mono green deck. They could probably do some damage with that. So be very aware of what you're getting rid of. And finally, Devastation Tide. At sorcery speed, for a 3 blue blue, we could turn all non-land permanents to their owner's hands. That does hurt us too, but we're not really too worried about it. Now, at that same time, if we draw this card and it's the first card we've drawn in a turn, we could pay 1 in a blue and instead of the 5 mana, and voila, we can still have mana to play other spells if we needed to. So not a bad option. It's probably our best option because we are blue. We don't have ways to uh, blow up the battlefield, so we'll just make you play it again and again and again and again and again until you're sad. Man, it's fun being blue. So, moving forward to our instances, this is what we are running. We are running 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different counter spells. They all do their own little thing and they all have their own little caveats. Most of them will counter just a spell in general. Some of them have to counter a non creature spell. Rewind and unwind. They allow us to untap lands after we've cast them so we can counter something else if we need to. Refute allows us to draw a card. Mystic Confluence gives us three modes to choose from, and we could choose the same mode more than once. So if somebody is trying to play a big bad Ur Dragon, well, as much as it hurts my soul to do it, because I do love my Ur Dragon, if you're able to play this card and then you can say, cool, I'm going to choose counter target spell unless the controller pays three times. So if you want your Ur Dragon, you have to pay 9 additional mana. Bye bye. Archmage's Charm over here also has a couple of different modes we can choose from, but we only get to choose one. So we can counter target spell, target player draws 2 cards, or gain control of target non-land permanent with mana value 1 or less. This is hilarious, I think, especially at the last ability. You can yoink somebody's soul ring. It doesn't say until end of turn. So you could jack somebody's soul ring, and I just think that's funny. Opt allows us to scry a card and then draw a card. Snap allows us to bounce a creature back to somebody's hand and untap 2 lands, so we can keep it going. Unfortunately, this looks like it has gone up, because at the time of the build, it was $1, or less than $1. How dare they? Maybe we'll have to see real quick if there's a cheaper version of this. At the time of the build, it was. Well, it looks like that is still the cheapest version. Well, dookie. I'm keeping it in anyway. It was there before. We also have Brain Surge that allows us to draw 4 cards and put 2 cards from our hand back on top of our deck in any order. Just kind of handy if we need to dig a little deeper. Reality Shift allows us to exile a creature and its controller manifests the top card of the library. So it's just another way to exile something out of our path. We have Aetherize that we can instant speed bounce all attacking creatures back to their owner's hands. So you can use this to typically save your own skin, but if you had to, you could save somebody else's skin, and in return, maybe they'll do your bidding and kill that person out of revenge. Last but not least, there's Evacuation, a 3 blue instant speed, return all creatures to their owner's hands. So if there's something going on that you don't like and you just want to be that person, you can just reset the whole battlefield. Nobody has any creatures. No, we're gonna play nice here today. This is a instant that I really wanted to kind of touch because not a lot of people know about this card, and I love this card because it's just a hilarious surprise, especially when you're on a budget. I actually run it in a non-budget build I have for a mono blue deck, just because people always go, "Wait, it does what?" So foil typically is a blue, and you counter target spell. What people don't expect out of this, especially in mono blue decks like this, if you discard an island card and another card, you can play this card basically for free. You don't have to pay that mana cost. So I call this the poor man's force of will because you're essentially doing a force of will without the price tag. So I think that's worth it in mono blue decks. I don't know if I would try it in anything that's like blue X, but in mono blue, I think it's worth it just because the reaction you get out of it's great. Moving forward to our artifact section, we run Arcane Signet, Hedron Archive, Mind Stone, Wayfarer's Bubble, the Commander Sphere, Prismatic Lens, a Sky Diamond, of course, the Soul Ring, and a Felwar Stone. That is our typical sweep of artifacts that you're going to see in most uh, Commander games, I would argue. Something you may not see a whole lot of because it's a 3-drop instead of a 2-drop, but the 2-drop version is out of our price range. We have Decanter of Endless Waters, a 3-drop that adds us 1 mana of any color, but most importantly, we have no max hand size. Thought Vessel is the better version of this at 2 mana and adds 1 colorless mana, but it's outside of our budget, so we went with the next best option. Cloak with the Bat is just another way for us to give haste to our commander so we can tap him immediately and use his ability if we have enough mana. It gives something flying, which I mean could be relevant with like Psychosis Crawler, I guess, or even a Chasm Skulker, just some big beefy boys coming in. Swiftfoot Boots was another exception I made to this build just because everybody should have a Swiftfoot Boots, especially because We just got a mass reprint in Foundations. I'm sure this price tag will come down as more and more and more of the set comes out. Not to mention, it's in just about every Commander precon. So it gives a creature hexproof and haste. So we really care about the hexproof and haste more than we do anything else. So yeah, explains why it's in here. Midnight Clock is our last mana rock in this deck, and it has a very interesting ability. So you could tap it to put a blue mana into your mana pool. And here's where the card is interesting in itself because you can tap to a blue and put an hour counter on the Midnight Clock. And it already is going to get one at the beginning of everybody's upkeep. So everybody's turn, it gets a counter. You, your opponents, back to you. It always gets a counter. Now, when it has 12 on it, regardless of where it is, you're going to exile this card and shuffle your hand and your graveyard back into your deck and draw a fresh 7 cards. So the only thing it cares about for its timing restriction, so to say, is that you have 12-hour counters on it. It doesn't matter if it's on Joe's turn instead of yours. If it happens to be on Joe's turn because you put 2 of blue and put another counter on it, then guess what? You're doing that effect. Unless somebody has a way to stop it, of course. But typically, you're going to be doing that effect. Lastly, a blast from the past, if you will. This brought me back because this used to be in like no joke, guys. This used to be in like every single one of our commander decks when we first started playing out. My group and my brother, we all had this in like every commander deck. At that time, we valued our cards in the graveyard more than anything. We did. I know I personally was just like, but I don't want my stuff to die. I want to get it back. I want to be able to do it again. And over the years, I've progressed and I've gotten better and realized some things they're not worth getting back. Let the be in the graveyard. We'll just keep steaming forward, and we'll beat you eventually, or we'll die. One of the two. But back in the day, this was a great card to always have in your commander deck. So this is the Elixir of Immortality, a 1-drop artifact that you can pay 2, tap it, gain 5 life, and then you shuffle the elixir and your graveyard back into your library. So, pardon me for that. So, what that really is a way to continuously get our graveyard even into our library, and we theoretically should not run out. Short of somebody milling this card or trying to blow it up when we don't have the mana to use it, we're always going to have access to our library. Just a nice blast from the past, in my opinion. Especially because people don't really play it that often anymore. I mean, I can kind of see why. I mean, even I moved away from it, but it's nice to have that blast from the past, I think. We have our enchantment suite, which is not very much. Imprison of the Moon is just a nice way to lock down a creature, land, or planeswalker. This includes a commander. Um, they can, of course, bounce it, the commander, or whatever, but, maybe we can stall them for a turn or so, and maybe they don't have a way to get rid of it anymore, so maybe it does lock out their whole strategy. You never know. I just thought it'd be a nice include for the deck, and I thought it'd be a nice way to kind of have an answer for something. If something is indestructible or whatever, well, let's just remove it from the equation. Let's make it a land, because then it loses all abilities and all card types, and now it's just a colorless land. That's all it is. Jace's Erasure and Teferi's Tutelage are our last big spells. They both make us target a player and make them mill cards. The Tutelage does 2, the Erasure does 1. So every time we draw a card, these trigger. So essentially, if both of these were out, you played the commander, you activated the commander, you draw 3 cards, you can make one person mill 9 cards, or you can spread it out 3-3-3. So it's a nice, I guess you could say, pseudo control alternate win condition if you get up and running fast enough. I mean, this would actually be devastating if those were out and you played the finale. Let's just play the finale X is 10. Somebody's milling 30 cards. That's a big chunk of cards. Or you can spread it out 10, 10, 10. But I think if you're going to go with a mill strategy, target somebody that could be the biggest problem and doesn't look like they have a lot of bring it back from the graveyard kind of effects, and that's probably the person I would go for. Land sweep is our last thing here. We're running some pretty typical cards you would see: Terramorphic, Evolving, Command Tower, Exotic Orchard, in our set of basic lands, which we're running 29. I'm still gonna brag about it. I'm still gonna tell you all to this day. Run a Field of Ruin, a Ghost Quarter, anything like that in every deck you possibly can. At least just one. Just one. The odds of you ever pulling it when you need it, sure, they may be slim to none, especially in a build like this. But it's nice knowing you at least have the option that you can blow up certain lands that are going to be a problem. And I'm here to tell you there's going to be certain lands that are going to be a problem. There's lands that give creatures trample, counters. There's lands that say that their controllers can take no damage at all. And then there's the dreaded Tabernacle. Curse you, evil Neil, curse you. If you haven't seen the Tabernacle of Penderville, I'll show it to you in a minute. Let's finish the deck tech though. Finally, we have the Riptide Laboratory, which I was very surprised and happy to see was in budget. It can make us just a colorless land, but most importantly, we can pay one a blue and return a wizard we control to our owner's hand. So if somebody happened to steal our win conditions, or there's a board wipe, we have a couple of mana open in this, we can hopefully save our win condition and just deploy it again later. I like having it. I think it's a nice option to have in here. Again, we're not really actively trying to find it, so kind of hard on that. Typically, the way you would try to find a piece like this is if you had no budget restriction and you added in a expedition map that typically can go find your specialty lands like this is what I like to call them, utility specials. Same thing. Let's go down here to our considering. Oh, look who's below $1. I think we have to add him in. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. He's getting moved in. Oh dear. People are about to have a bad day. Let's take you out. Yoink. Yeet out of the deck. This is what I was talking about. I am so glad he dropped below budget with his reprint of Innistrad Remastered. So if you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, you win the game. Now, we don't have to worry so much about the shuffle effects. We can keep them if we need to, but typically, we're not going to worry about it. We have a Laboratory Maniac in the main deck, and we have a way to really win with the deck. So now we have another win condition. We could always go back and retool the deck a little bit if we felt like it to be a little bit more inclusive of the Laboratory Maniac. In fact, we might actually do that real quick just because I didn't expect it to drop in price that fast. So let's do that real quick. Hold on. Let's go to Wizard Cycling. Yep, yep, yep. Okay. So we have Step Through and the Dalkin Aether Mage. So let's take out our Strix here. And let's take out, what do I want to take out? Clear the Mind allows us to draw a card, so maybe Reminiscence. I still think we need at least one Clear the Mind. I think it's a nice card to have. But the reasoning for adding the Veldalkin Aether Mage is it is flash speed for a 1/2 body at 2 mana. So we can at least flash it out and still have some kind of blocker if we needed to. And you never know. You could be fighting a sliver deck, and when it comes into play, return that sliver back to its owner's hand. I mean, it could become a thing. They did make a sliver precon, so it might matter. More more importantly, it has what we call wizard cycling. So for 3 mana, you will discard this card, search your library for a wizard card, reveal it, and put it to your hand, then shuffle your library. I'll have you know you could do this at the end of somebody's turn if you felt the need to go do it. What would you go grab? Gee, I don't know. One win condition, two win conditions. I think that's pretty good. Same thing with Step Through. It's a 5 mana sorcery that can return two creatures to their owner's hands. So it has versatility. I mean, at 5 mana, it's a little bit high, but it allows us to be able to bounce something, two creatures actually, if we really needed to. Most importantly, for 2 mana, we can wizard cycle this thing. We can yeet it to the graveyard and go find our win conditions. Guys. Well, I guess let's go through EDH Rec real quick and just make sure none of the other like mass draw spells are here in our budget, which I don't believe they are going to be. A lot of that kind of stuff is pretty high in the price range. But you know what? I'm really considering this flow of knowledge now. Draw a card for each island you control, then discard 2 cards. I'm really gonna have to consider that. What I talked about earlier, this is Windfall. This is one of the wheel effects you can run into out wild. Each player discards their hand, then draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way. So it has potential to really go doo-doo on our poor Psychosis Crawler, which we don't want to happen. That's the importance of putting a 1/1 counter on him. Ah, Blue Sun Zenith, you're just out of budget. Just out of budget. Drop like, I don't know, 31 cents minimum, please. We have Treasure Cruise, but I don't really want to throw that in here. Another really good win condition, as you can see, is definitely out of budget. Thassa's Oracle. You can look that up yourself and kind of decide and see why that's so good. We have like this guy that we can untap things with, but we can only do it at sorcery speed. That's why he wasn't actually included in the main deck. This guy can do it too, but again, he's over budget. That'd be nice, but that's over budget. I'm excited now. I did not expect that to drop in price that fast. It has only been out for like a week or so, and it has plummeted, and I'm so happy to see that. That makes me giggle. So it looks like hmm, looks like that might be it. Just because everything there, we actually could come up here and get the body of knowledge. I think if we really feel like doing that. No max hand. Yeah, we have no max hand size, and now with a lab man, we're okay with drawing a whole bunch of cards. I don't know what we're gonna drop for it though. Probably the Scourge. I don't think we're really gonna need the Scourge now. And there we go. We've made some minor tweaks to the deck. Wasn't really planning on that, but hey, I will glad to do it for a lab man. And we have better wing. We have a better wing condition. Mana curve still looks good. So I think I think we'll be all right. Oh wow. Oh, the temptation to keep that is so great, but I don't think we need to. Just a quick run through of the deck. Ugh, terrible. Better. Put you at the bottom. Let's draw. Land go. Another land. This thing. Play that. Play that. Let's scry 2 and draw a card. So 1, 2. Unfortunately, neither one of these are actually land, and I think we need the land right now more than we need anything else. So bottom, bottom, draw. Hey, next turn, could drop that. Drop a homunculus friend. We're still ahead of the curve for our dropping our commander. So the commander comes out. The next turn, we keep counter magic up just to help deal things. We could tap that and draw one, two, three. Play a land. Play the bauble. Keep mana open. I mean, yeah. Yeet that. If you are a library, let's get this island onto the battlefield. Let's shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. And let's see where we look on turn 7. Oh, spicy. So we could do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we still have another counterspell open, so we could actually drop the dragon and you can draw 1, 2, 3. And, we'll be pretty good to go, I think. And I think that'll be a pretty good show for that deck. So let's uh let's call this one to a close and tell me what you think. What do you think about this budget version, Arcanis the Omnipotent? As you probably heard, my wonderful daughter is calling for her daddy to come and play. So, of course, I must leave. With that, please like, share, subscribe, and remember, rub that belly for mana, and may your games be filled with luck. Peace out.